Well, this is Baruch Fleischman, and for those of you who are interested in so, we understand that these shiurim are not necessarily directed at beginners. This is something for people who have an ability to be able to learn this, and I apologize for that, but this is something that has been needed to be discussed. Be able to look at the Shar Tanta here in the Otzrot Chaim. What the Otzrot Chaim really shows you is the patterns on the basis of all of Kabbalah. It's not that the Kabbalah comes from the Otzrot Chaim. The Otzrot Chaim is an example of the best that we have, the most complete example in one work of the thinking of the Riyah Kodesh, the different things that he does in order to teach us. We talked about two lines of light that are coming out of the nose of Adam Kadmon. The purpose of the openings in the head of Adam Kadmon are to limit down the light of the Ein Sof, because the light of the Ein Sof, as it's possible to say, is nothing. Light is already a concept. So when you have this already a mental concept that we have an idea of what light could possibly mean, but not of the Ein Sof at all. So we're dealing here with a secondary light, something called a secondary relationship to the Ein Sof itself, which is called light. So that's basically what's coming at. Now we're looking at the light that is coming from the inside of Ak, which is the light of the Ein Sof. And we're looking at that light as it's coming through the nose in two straight lines, like straws going down to the chest. Now, he wants to say that this is the concept of the letter Vav. Also, that the nose, and we're going to see over here, is the concept of Saag. And at the level of the nose, it refers to the middle Taamim of Saag. So let's go over here and read the, we'll read the Rav also, and then we'll read the light print. These two vavim that are coming out of the nose of Ak, elu imachaitim atzmo shirutzasu av kanoida. So he wants to say shiraso av aleph kanoida. So he says, and also the nose itself is in the form. Did you ever think about this? That your nose in the form of an aleph. Ki shnei nikve hachaitim hem shnei yudin, because we say like the openings, like a circle opening, like a nostril, is really the concept of a yud, because in many places the Kabbalah tells us, the Rab tells us, that a dot is the same thing as a yud. So in other words, a circular opening. And then of course there's the bridge of the nose that separates the two nostrils. Tzuras Vav, it's in also the form of the Vav. So Hare Tzuras Aleph, so that makes the Surah of the Aleph. You have a dot in the top, which is a 10, and a dot in the bottom, which is a 10, and a diagonal line corresponding to the bridge of the nose. Imashnei Vavim, Hare Vav Aleph Vav, so it has a Vav on the right, a Vav in the middle, and then there's an Aleph in between them that really incorporates the two Vavs, making a gematria of 13. So let's see how this works. And as we sing this song of the Rav, the Tiv comes in and you say it again. V'yeshno remez noisif el ha'or ha'yotzim in. So this is what we say. There's a hint, an internal tie, a secret tie between the lights that's coming out of the nose. Shetzarasa Gatsuras Vav Alavav, that the nose itself is the form of a Vav and an Aleph and a Vav. V'hukishtei osios Vav elu, because these two letters Vav, shenizgala b'chayta, that are now revealed in the nose, im achotim atzmo, together with the chotim itself, shu tzuras Aleph, which is in the form of an Aleph, azai came mashlemim shihia Vav Alavav, and this makes a complete cycle, which brings it into the number 13, Vav Aleph Vav. That's the word Vav spelled out. But also it represents the right line of the nose coming out of the nose, the left line coming out of the nose, and then the Aleph, we said, represents the nose itself. But you could also see that there's a tie-in into it to the number 13, Shuhu Kaminyan Yud Gimel. Now he hasn't said anything about the Yud Gimel Midas of Rachamim, he hasn't talked about that. So that's not, so maybe that's for another time. Zohavachatam, and the reason, Shechachotim Hu Tzuras Aleph. Now he wants to spell it out for us again. Why do we say that it's in the form of an Aleph? Ki kol os Aleph, because every time that you have the letter Aleph, Morkeves ma'os yud lamala va'os yud lamata. So it's really a grafting of two yuds, one represented by the yud on the top, va'os yud lamata, and then a yud in the bottom, va'os vav omedes benehem, and then there's a vav in between the two. Kakav natui, like placing like a tilted vav. So we could say like this, let's make that metaphor go to the nostrils of the nose. Shemisham yotzim oris achayte, because this is where the lights of the nose come out. Hamakifim v'chabenimim, and these are the lights which are two different kinds of light. From the right nostril comes out the or, which is called a makif, and from the left comes out an or, which is called a benimi. Hey, meramazim lashon yud l'shnei yudim, and so there's a hint here to the two yudin of the aleph, sheba'os aleph, she'akeven shekol nekev b'choitim sirasu gatzuras yud. So since we're saying that each one of the nostrils is in the form of a yud, lebein nekavim yeshna koisa lamapsik, and between the two, and he's just really repeating more or less what the Rav said. He said bebein nekavim yeshna koisa lamapsik, because there's a bridge of the nose that separates benehem, between them, shetzirasuk os vav, which has the form of a vav. Os aleph. So now you have that yud in the top and the yud in the bottom, which is also like a dot or a nostril, an upper one and a lower nostril with a bridge in between them. That's what he says is the metaphor. So when you join together these two vavim, they come out of the two nikavim of the nose, the two nostrils of the nose. Shehem yud beis alafim, because you have 3 and 3. So he said that, let me tell you something, that not only is the nose itself in the form of an aleph, but the vav itself has within it 6 alephs. And this is really stamping the concept of 6. That there are 6 beginnings. Aleph is the beginning letter that are coming here. Harehem olam yachtav keminyan vav aleph vav. So then now you have the gematria of the vav itself spelled out with the milui of an aleph. Shemispara begematria yud gimel comes out to the count of 13. So he said number yud aleph is hula horos, and this is to teach kilamala bebechinis arosh. So when you're looking at the aspect of head, Shesham makom amochim hu shem abda chavavaya the yudin. So let's go back to what we had said before, and we're just reading the Rav. He says if we go to the top part of the head, and we're talking about akir, he says that this area represents the concept of the chavaya of yudin, which I'm not sure he's going to spell it out down below. We'll see it over there. Bekan hu shem saag, and here we're digging with the saag. He said, ain't hefresh bein chavaya the av, because there's really no difference between the chavaya, which is av, and we're going to see it in a minute, the chavaya the saag, and the chavaya the saag rak b'milui os vav. The only place that you see this is in the same vav in its milui form. So here we have to know what the concept of a milui is, and he's teaching. Kenoida. Now let's see, the Tiv is going to spell it out a little bit more for us. He says, "Hatam sheyotzem in achaytim os vav aleph vav daika." The reason why what comes out of the nose is this concept of this vav aleph vav, which he says is a gematria of 13. It's like this. If you look at the top of the skull, and this is true of all partsufim, incidentally, there is a top of the skull, and there are special qualities to it. He says, Shahu HaKarkafta, which is the top of the skull, Shabo Nimsoi Mamochin, that inside of the skull is a concept which is called mochim. So we understand that mochim in regular Hebrew refers to brain matter, and of course this is the source of the energy that spreads through the entire body. Shom Hu Shem Av, in this area, he's telling us that if you had a Kabbalistic microscope that could look at the karkafta of Ak, you would see that it's composed of certain letters. So he says those letters spell a gematria of 72. Shahu Chavaya b'milu yudin, and it looks like this, because they're yud vav dalet k yud vav k yud. So you see all of the fill outs of the hey, the vav, and the final hey are filled out with the letter Yud. So he said, "Ve'edo b'chaitin misgal l'shem sag." Whereas when we come to the nose, that's not the top of the head anymore. That's already down in the middle of the face. So Rav Havaya b'milu Yudin va'alef, but it follows the same pattern, which is the pattern of Yud Vav Daled and K Yud. But when it comes to the next letter, which is the Vav, which refers to the nose, it changes. So he says it's like this: Shuhu Havaya b'milu Yudin, and there's also an Aleph in the middle of the Vav. Kazeh Yud Vav Daled K Yud Vav Aleph Vav K Yud. So take a moment and compare this milui, which is the gematria 63, to this milui, which is just the difference is the Yud versus the Aleph. Is a difference of 9. 72 minus 9 is 63. The whole difference between these two names, halalu, who rak ba'oz vav, only refers to the letter vav. Ki b'shem av, hu vav yud vav, because in Aleph it's a vav yud vav, of b'shem sag hu vav aleph vav. B'lechein nirmaz vav aleph vav b'chaitim, so therefore you have a reference to the concept of vav aleph vav in the nose. Elohoros, in order to teach us and to show us, sheb'chaitim is gala shem sag, because in the nose you have there the revelation of the name Sag, right? The gematria. V'shleimos in its perfection. Below Shem Av, and not the name Av. Let's hold for a second. Let's see if I can get a little preview of what's coming up in the next. So let's just look at the next, starting on number Yud base, and now we're going to be at the top of the page. Now, the top of the page represents the words of the Holy Uri as told to Rebbe Chaim Batal. Be'elach vavim, so the two vavs that are coming out of the nose, heim bebechinas Taamim emseim. They're lines, don't forget. And they're the concept of the middle Taamim, because there are Taamim that are in the middle of words. That are found in the middle between words. In which these particular Taamim, one is called a Psak and the other one is called a Makif, Kanoda. Now we know this, I'm really not an expert at learning the Torah and knowing the differences between all of these and the sounds that they make, and between Sfardim and between Ashkenazim. You got different sounds altogether anyway, so I'm an observer. I'm just reading what the Rav says. He says, horas psak, he horas havav, because when you show the psak appears, it's really to tell you that it's one of the lines of the nose shalahei, of the vav that's part of the hay, the original hay that came from the ear, shenipsika, that becomes split. In other words, you separate the hay into a vav and a daled, and now we're talking about the part that becomes separated. V'na'asa the vav alofim keniskar, and it makes itself into 6 olives, as we mentioned before. This psak, this interruption in a makif, heim suras daled, they make the form of a daled. Now, what he's not saying here, and he's going to in the Pirush as we get to it in our next year, is that the difference is that the psak is a vertical line, and the makif, which is pulling actually letters together, a combiner, is a horizontal line. But in any case, what's coming out of the nose, he says, is really a concept of these middle lines. One is vertical, and the other one is horizontal, but nonetheless, it's a line. Heim suras daled achas. So therefore, you have the vertical line, which is the psak, and the horizontal line, which makes the letter daled. It makes one daled. These two middle tamim can be made into a letter which was previously hidden, and now is being formed up. Bihoraz os hadalad shall osa hey, and this is to show you that within the letter hey, which we said before was a complete letter, just one letter, as it moves to the nose, it becomes separated out into a vav and a dalad, where the vav appears and the dalad is still hidden. But now we see that the concept of the tamim, the middle tamim, is a line, a horizontal line, and a vertical line. Both of them put together make the letter daled, and now we have an inference to the daled. And with God's help, tomorrow we'll start learning into the Tiv HaKavanos. This is Baruch Fleischman at the Tikkun Elevator Call.